Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from Wise, Witty and Weird. Now I just wish to apologise to all those people on Twitch that I just posted to just a minute ago. We've started up a Twitch account, and if you want to have a look at us there, please feel free to do so. There'll be lots of other videos that we'll put up on Twitch over time, but we've just started there, so who knows what's going to happen. And if anybody's watching us on Twitch, thanks for doing so. We appreciate it. And the reason why I've got this particular live feed happening is that oh God, I've lost it now. No, there we go. There it is. I just wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about the coronavirus and the fact that we at the moment are heading out of the coronavirus here in South Australia, and it's pretty comforting to know that we've been able to do that primarily because we're bloody clever, really, and the fact that we also had a lockdown which we began very early, as it turned out, and as a result of going in early and going in hard and all that sort of crap, I guess we've been able to turn things around slightly. So welcome everybody, and I hope that what we say today is helpful to you, and if you want to have a conversation with us about some of the things that I say, please feel free to do so. I'm hoping that later on today I might be able to get another feed in with Avery. So stay tuned, keep track of what we're doing, and please, if you can you please remember to subscribe and ring the bell, which is vitally important. So please do so if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're watching on Twitch, please follow us. So Andrew Bolt. Now, I have great issues with Sky News, and if I was in America, it'd be the same with Fox News, I guess, because they're just a bunch of wankers, and that their talking heads really need all their heads bashed together, because they are full of misinformation and they tell us things that generally are not true. And someone has to get online and someone has to say, look, some of the things that you're saying are just bizarre, and we'd prefer you to stop because it's unhelpful, or at least put forward an alternate view about what you're thinking, what they're thinking, and let's have some discussion around whether or not that is appropriate. I think some of the issues are that we, on the left particularly, tend to be a little bit quieter, perhaps not a little bit aggressive, as is the right. And there's been lots of commentary in the US, particularly around the Young Turks, in relation to how we should be having those types of conversations, how we should be standing up for our particular views, and perhaps be a little bit aggressive. I have an issue with how aggressive we need to be. I did a post on our Facebook page on the Child Protection Party on a Sunday night where I was a little bit more forthright around some of the right-wing views. Here on Wise, Witty and Weird, I don't give a shit. I'm going to be a little bit more attacking, talk a little bit more about how I think and feel, and I guess people can probably equate that with or connect it with Child Protection Party if you wish. But this is my forum to be able to say what I think about the morons that are producing some of the media so-called news, which really isn't news, it's just opinion pieces, the likes of Chris Kenny, Paul Murray, Andrew Bolt and others who present a version of facts which are not facts at all. It is just their opinion. However, that's what I'm doing. I'm presenting my opinion, and that my opinion may not necessarily be right, often probably is wrong, according to you, but I'd like to at least have a discussion with you about in what ways do you think my opinions around certain issues are incorrect. So I'm just going to play a little bit about of a conversation that I think it was recorded, it came up on YouTube today, so I guess it's today, probably from last night, I would suggest, where Andrew Bolt's talking about the protests. Now, I have strong issues around these protests because they are flouting the laws in relation to the health orders that are out there, and it puts a lot of us at risk because we the government, look, we may not like the government, we may resent many of the decisions that they make, and we may feel aggrieved by some of those decisions. But I don't believe for a moment that governments make decisions such as the ones they do around coronavirus because they're extremely autocratic, or they wish to take over the country by exerting these unreasonable requests upon us. I think that if, in Australia in particular, if a government chose to implement some sort of martial law or whatever against us, we would rise up in our minions in order to object to that. I don't think that's the point. I think the point here is that they are doing what they can with whatever evidence that they have, that these are the most appropriate steps that should be taken, and that there are people in our community who object to those requests. And we'll be talking about that in another session about sovereign citizens and their bizarre bloody views around the way they believe their society or our society should operate. So I'm here today, though, just wanted to come across a couple of these clips with my friend Mr. Bolt, and criticise him for being the jerk that he actually is. And so I just want to play part of this, and we'll break it up and we'll have a conversation throughout this clip. You can see this on the Sky News YouTube channel, so have a look if you wish to indoctrinate yourself with some more shit. This is where it comes from. So here's Andrew. We'll just give him a buzz.
To the weekend protests against these lockdowns of half of Australia. Now, whether you're for lockdowns or against, the way these protests have been abused and lied about, it's not just wrong, it's dumb and destructive. More than 10,000 Australians are so upset and scared by these lockdowns that they marched in Sydney and in Brisbane, they marched in Melbourne and in Adelaide, even though they knew they risked pepper spray, arrest and $1,000 fines. And how many more Australians?
I think one of the issues here that fascinates me is that here in Australia, I don't think we don't have, it's not since the Vietnam moratoriums that we've had rallies which have been standing up against authority and lousy decisions. And that back in the early 70s, when those rallies were taking place, a lot of people believed that they were there because it was an unjust law, that young people were dying, and that fighting a war that we were going to lose was not a healthy stance for any government to take. And certainly we needed to make that stand. I don't think that this particular rally is about the same sort of issue. This rally was actually about people believing that their freedoms were being taken off them, and then there was another group of people who were concerned not about that, but the fact that they couldn't work and that they didn't have enough income, and those sorts of things were playing a role, I guess. And it became important, I guess, for all of those people to raise their concerns, but really having a rally was not going to be the answer. In fact, as a result of this rally, there's more negativity come out, and it's divided the community, I think, even more than the way we were divided before. And but Andrew Bolt, he has a specific opinion around all of this, because whether we like it or not, Andrew Bolt is the expert in bloody everything. I'd love to be a part of Andrew's world where his opinions are always based on fact, that he clearly has a medical knowledge that supersedes any other knowledge that might be out there, and that he's fighting for the people on the lower economic spectrum of community, that he understands how they're feeling, he's involved with the community in a deep and emotional way. And what I just said was the biggest load of shit I've ever said in my life. He doesn't give a rat's ass. He doesn't care. Kenny doesn't care. The others in there, they don't care. They make out they care. And that what we see often through Sky News is this performance arts shit that they put on to give this impression that they are these wonderful contributors to society, that they have all the answers and so on. Now, I admit that people can be critical and that we need some critical thinking, but we need critical thinking, not bizarre notions which are based on a sense of, or they're based on a hypothesis that just doesn't exist, and that is that that they on the right have all the answers to all of us, and that their beliefs, which are about concern about fiscal responsibility, for example, not necessarily interested in how some of those decisions affect all the others. The others are those that are the minority groups, the groups that necessarily don't have a voice. So they're not interested in any of them. What they're interested in is primarily pushing this notion that that the conservative aspect of politics needs to be dominant, and those voices are being diminished in some bizarre way because there's a lot of these other voices now, particularly the progressives, who are making noises that they simply don't like because those noises now are in conflict with each other. The right's yelling and screaming at the left, and the left is muted in many ways because we're not screaming loud enough at the right. Time has come for us to scream back. And so the reason why I play some of these videos from Bolt is because I'm doing some of those screamings now. So here's further what Andrew had to say.
Would have marched with them had they known of the protests or not been too scared to join in. I'm talking about people who've lost their job, their business, people whose children have missed months of proper schooling, people who've been kept apart from those they love most, people going crazy with loneliness.
Now, I don't necessarily disagree with Andrew around any of that, people have lost their jobs, that kids need to be back at school, maybe, providing it's safe, and that there's some mental health issues that have been raised as a result of the lockdown, clearly. But, and so it isn't that I always disagree with Bolt, I just disagree with him 90% of the time. We've just experienced that 10% where it's been okay to agree with him.
People scared of the bullying now to get themselves injected, get even their children injected with a new vaccine that they don't trust.
Now there again, Bolt does have a point, because the Labor, it sounds like I'm agreeing with him a lot here, doesn't it? It's a bit distressing, to be honest. But he does make the point, though, that the way their criticism has come out around minuscule amounts of blood clotting as a result of the AstraZeneca vaccine, that it has created a sense of despair in the community, and people are wondering about it. I think, though, that what people are now seeing is the fact that the need to receive the appropriate vaccine, because the response or the negative impacts of it are so rare, that it now needs to be considered, regardless of your age group. And if Pfizer's not there, go out and get AstraZeneca. You know, the chances of getting blood clot are really, really remote. The chance of having a response to the flu injection is probably just as great in some instances. So, you know, we need to look at this in a more reasonable way. Let's see how reasonable he is.
Don't get me wrong, I want Australians to get vaccinated like I have been.
Yeah, there was a time, though... when he was pushing back against the vaccines. I tried to find those videos to show you, and I just couldn't find it just quickly. But there was a time when he and his colleagues were pushing back on vaccines. And he often talks about the generation of fear that the left is creating, or politicians are creating. You know, when you listen to this man, you realise that he is the generator of fear and doubt. You know, so he doubts everything. And therefore, if we listen to him and believe him, we also will doubt things.
I don't think the virus is a hoax and vaccinations...
Oh, now he doesn't think it's a hoax. Oh, my God. the media in the right have been pushing the hoax around the vaccine, and there are many people out there. So it's pleasing. Oh, God, am I agreeing with him once more? It is pleasing to know that he has taken this particular perspective, because there was a time when a lot of his kinship friends were stating that the virus was a hoax, that it wouldn't solve the problem, that there wasn't enough evidence to prove whether or not it was going to work, and that it was too early. Back, sort of towards the end of last year, I guess. They were all the things that the right wing were talking about. Now, suddenly, they've all come on board. And it's really interesting. In the US now, the Tucker Carlsons of this world and the Hannitys and so on, they now are all talking up the virus, because suddenly they've started to realise that this is the conversation that's going to save lives. There was a time when all of them were canning the virus and suggesting that we don't wear masks and that we not abide by whatever were the health regulations, because people like Anthony Fauci were dickheads. But now we've changed that idea. Now we're saying, these things that now are being suggested are really good, because the evidence is overwhelming that they save lives. And they're not going to be in that position anymore where they're advocating that people should die. So here they are changing their views.
A plot, as some of Saturday's nuttier protesters do. And I certainly don't support those few protesters who were violent. Attacking police is shameful. But I also detest how these protesters were treated like absolute dirt by their politicians.
I just need to make a comment here that none of these comments are treating them like dirt. These are politicians, for once in their lives, being honest about what they believe was happening, and just being honest about how they think about what these protesters were doing. These protesters were not all jerks. I agree with him. But a lot of them were. A lot of them were these sovereign citizen type people who believe that they have the right to conduct themselves in a society completely out of bounds, with societal rules, with legal requirements, with everything, in fact. And they're just friggin' crazy people. And there's a lot of them out there selling this crap about the way we should be conducting ourselves in our society, because the Constitution says that we should be doing this thing and all the laws are wrong. And I'll go into this in another discussion at another time. But they were the crazy people. And I think that the likes of Daniel Andrews and Gladys Berejiklian have the right to be able to say that they're bloody disappointed, as all these people are saying.
Are not persuaded by me on the issue of protests being frankly evil, then go and have a talk to the family of that poor woman who's died.
What we saw today were 3,500 very selfish bullfeds.
Thank you to all of you doing the right thing, and to those of you that aren't, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
And I agree. They should be ashamed of themselves. Absolutely. And they are potential super spreaders of this virus. Now, we're going to not know for probably a week as to whether or not any of those people were infected and whether they infected other people. But there's a good chance that they will. And it will extend the lockdown. So the things that they're trying to overcome, that is unemployment, not income, disparities, and how they feel about their freedom, are going to be curtailed even more if there's more lockdowns, right? And they had the right, these politicians have the right to express their frustration. We criticise them sometimes because we don't believe they're honest enough. When they are honest with us, we put the boot in, as Bolt's about to do.
The New South Wales Police Minister even called them half-wits. Now, I detest also how our politicians pretended not to even understand the fears of these protesters.
Seriously, I'm making a serious point. I don't know what half of them were protesting against.
You.
Well,
a lot of them.
Then, good on them.
And I detest how politicians smeared these protesters with fake claims.
My heart goes out to the many officers that were injured today. Some of them appear to be seriously injured.
None of the police should have been injured at all. There were minor injuries, but the claims that police were seriously injured is false. New South Wales police and journalists also claim that one protester, a thug we were told, even punched a police horse named Tobruk, with police posting how Tobruk had thankfully emerged uninjured from what it called an awful encounter.
So here we have Bolt trying to disparage and to discredit the politicians, which sometimes needs to be done. I don't disagree with that. But in this particular case, I think it's unnecessary. And what happened to this horse? Now, the photograph that was taken probably does show something. It does show a guy thumping a horse, which he should not be doing. The argument was that he was pushing him away. He's pushing him away with his friggin' fist to start with. And the degree... So I think the jury's out as to whether or not he actually punched this horse or not. He shouldn't have been near the bloody horse to start with, right? He should have been at the bloody rally, but he shouldn't have been close enough to the horse in order for the horse to get in his way, if that's actually what happened.
But the photo that went viral of this punch actually gives a fake impression. A video suggests that the punch was actually a push as the horse swung its head towards a protester. Hands off the horse. Nice horse, but it wasn't a punch. I also detest the scaremongering by politicians about these protesters.
Now, I find this fascinating because it isn't like Bolt's into scaremongering. This is his brand, for God's sake. He's so much into it. Jesus Christ. But here he is doing the same.
We know that events like that can cause those super spreading events.
Now, it's true, there is a risk of this virus spreading in a crowd. But this was a protest in the open air, and the risk of
No, Andrew. It's at times like this I think you've got your whole fist stuck up your butt, seriously. Because this particular virus spreads very easily. Now, in terms of the other strains of the virus, it was less likely outdoors that it would spread. I just don't know whether we need to remind Andrew that this wasn't a stroll in the park where everybody were heaps and heaps of, like 20, 30, 40 metres from each other. This is a stroll down the street in which everybody was really closely packed to each other. This is not what you would consider to be your normal open air activity. Andrew, there are times I just think you're an idiot.
Transmission in the open is very low, very low. And authorities say they don't know of a single infection from last year's Black Lives Matter protesters, also held in the open air during lockdowns. And speaking of those protests...
this is going back by my memory, so I haven't checked this out, but I suspect that there were claims that with the BLM rallies that there were likely to be infections, right? I don't know just offhand as to whether there were any significant infections, but they were claiming that there would have been. The other difference too with the BLM rallies were most of those people were masked. So it's a different thing because these guys hate Black Lives Matter because they despise the minorities of any description, and so we just must conflate the two somehow, and they're completely different rallies for completely different reasons. In fact, the reasons why these rallies are held, if you want to compare them both, are diametrically opposed to each other.
I can't stand the hypocrisy of the politicians and the journalists who think that the Black Lives Matter protesters, they were noble. But last week's protesters, this weekend...
Yes, they were. They were fighting for recognition for the grievances that coloured people have in this country and around the world. And rightfully so. So bugger off, Andrew, seriously.
Protesters, they were scum. Green Senator Sarah Hanson-Young last year damned New South Wales for taking organisers of the Black Lives Matter protesters protests to court, and she was proud that South Australia let the march go ahead. But now she says the people at Saturday's anti-lockdown protesters, well, they were selfish idiots and dangerous anti-science whack jobs. But again, if these protesters are anti-science whack jobs, what do we call Queensland's Chief Health Officer, who refused to let any young Queenslander get the AstraZeneca vaccine, telling them they'd be safer taking their chances with the virus?
I don't want an 18-year-old in Queensland dying from a clotting illness.
I see. Who can blame these protesters for not trusting any of them? Not the politicians, not the police, not the health advisors, not the journalists.
So this is where I really have an issue with Bolt, because at the end of the day, he's not supportive of anybody. Everybody, politicians, police, everybody, except for the protesters, funnily enough. Everybody else, though, is at fault. And he doesn't understand that this sort of language, these sorts of conversations are confusing to a lot of people who think for some reason that the sun shines out of his ass. Well, it doesn't, and that there are other views, and we need to be a little bit more rational and a little bit more sensible than what Bolt is. So you kind of wonder, what is his criteria for all of this? And it is that he plays to a base. And the base are those people who continually watch Sky News, who are right-wing in their views of the world, that are racist in those views, and who portray a part of Australia to some extent, and I'm not suggesting this is all of them at all, so don't get on my back, but who plays this version of Australia which is just unhelpful, hurtful, and denigrating of those that really do need our help.
But more important is that this abuse of the protesters, it's not just unfair, it's actually stupid, unproductive. Those protesters and many others sympathisers now know that the politicians are still lying about them, still abusing and bullying and still not listening to their fears, and soon this could really blow up. When we get to the point where, like Germany, France, US, we get politicians saying that the way out, vaccine passports. Get vaccinated or you're going...
So this is Andrew Bolt not trying to spread fear. Because, as Andrew said, this isn't what he does. This is what everybody else does. Everybody else wants to spread fear and panic, but no, not Andrew, because he's so reasonable.
Nowhere, not even to a restaurant. You want rioting? Wait until that. But there is a better way, and it's not abuse. It requires patience and sympathy and the facts to them.
And they're three things that Andrew has so many of. Patience, sympathy, and facts. He doesn't have any empathy, I don't think. But they're three things that resonate with Andrew because at the end of the day, he's an exceptional human being.
Build trust. Be honest.
Build trust. That's important to Andrew. Being honest is important to Andrew Bolt. Well, I could go and bury my head in the sand, which is what Bolt does probably most of the time. But here we are. He's being honest and he's building trust.
No, it's true. None of these vaccines are 100% safe. None of the vaccines work 100%. You can still get sick. It's sure. And these lockdowns do often...
I love this. So now Andrew's being extremely wise. This is who he is. He's a wise man.
Cause far more harm than good. Let's be honest about all this. But also, let's stick to facts. You know the 8 people who died in Sydney from this outbreak? It's now 10, just as of a few hours ago. But let's stick to the 8 that I know about. Not one of those 8 were vaccinated. Some people think that the youngest that died...
Now suddenly... and this is what I think this is good that he's talking about this. Don't get me wrong, but there was a time where he didn't. These ideas did not occupy his mind because all the experts were saying that the vaccinations work. And now he's having to, I mean, the facts are there. When he can make up his own facts if it fits his narrative. But in this particular instance, the facts are there, man. You know, look at the facts. And he can't ignore them. So when he can't ignore them, he has to present them. And, you know, I kind of wonder, well, why in the world do you even want to talk about this if the facts go against everything that you believe in? And maybe at some level, Murdoch or the executive have said, you know, we've got to start to look at this stuff a little bit more reasonably. So you need to put your head in, mate, and you need to start to talk about it in ways that are going to inform people, your audience, the people that you love, in ways which are constructive.
I may have had one shot, but officials so far reckon the first 8 dead, none vaccinated. Yesterday, 43 people in intensive care in New South Wales. 42 had not been vaccinated. The other had had just one shot. My daughter didn't get vaccinated, didn't listen to her dad.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Your daughter didn't listen to her father. The most negative person on this planet didn't listen to your dad. Well, maybe at that particular time, Andrew, you were spouting so much anti-government crap that you, because I don't know whether Andrew's in Victoria or New South Wales, but either way, they're the two states that have been hit the heaviest. And I'm assuming your daughter lives in one of those states. But, you know, why didn't she go get vaccinated? Because you've been so friggin' anti-government. Your daughter just represents all of those people out there that you've disregarded and minimised over the last 18 months. Because you bastard, sow so much doubt in them, in all these people, that perhaps you sowed doubt in your own daughter. You know? I'm not suggesting you did. I don't know your daughter, nor you, but I'm guessing that maybe you're responsible for her decision. And that kind of hits it home, doesn't it? You know, like if someone that you care for winds up with the virus, then, you know, then it's kind of real, you know. Like because we have so few cases here, I don't know of anybody that has actually had the virus. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. You know, my bubble is a bubble, but it's not that impervious to other shit that's happening out there in the world, I can tell you. But, you know, but Andrew and your crew, you just live in a bubble. Just live in that little bubble. And what else?
She's now got the virus. Now, she should be all right, even though I've been bloody worried. But you hear it from me. You do not want...
Now, when Andrew says that his daughter's got the virus, she must have been relatively ill. I'm assuming she's a relatively young person, maybe 30s, 40s perhaps. I don't know. But I'm assuming that he got concerned because it happened to his daughter. If it hadn't happened to his daughter, maybe it would be, you know, one level removed from his experiences. You know? And I guess that's kind of sad, really, because you shouldn't have had to had that experience to know how real it is. You shouldn't have known. You should have just known, but you didn't.
To get what she's got, get vaccinated. Now, our politicians must calmly explain all this with patience, as friends, as someone who understands the fears of even the unreasonable. And that way we'll get there, I reckon. And
the fears of the unreasonable. So that's about trying to understand Andrew's fears and his ilk, and because there's plenty of them, you know. And the unreasonables he's talking about are those right-wing crazies who believe the world's going to come to an end because, you know, it is. You know, it's like I watched a video the other day on YouTube where a guy was talking about chaos that the system's so stuffed, and that there's got to be a civil war by the end of the year, and that the place will just be overrun by chaos. I think we need to stand up against those people that believe this garbage, and we need to ensure that a sense of morality and principle exists no matter what it is that we're doing, no matter what it is that we believe. You can have your beliefs, and you can be passionate about them. In fact, I celebrate that. I know it doesn't matter. I posted something on somebody's wall the other day objecting to their views around they were for the protest. I was against it, so I posted on their wall, and they used some language to describe who I was. They didn't even know who I was, but they were so adamant that I was wrong. So, and they were bloody rude. I wasn't rude to them. So, but if we want these discussions, let's just have them. That's fine. But let's stand up also against them through these sorts of forums, through Twitch and through YouTube and Facebook, and let's have a voice and let's have a discussion. You can say that I'm wrong, but let's at least argue why you might think that I'm wrong. Let's hear the logic behind your arguments. I'll do my best. I'm not the most logical person on this planet, I agree, but at least I'm prepared to have those discussions, and we can have them here. So thanks everybody for being with me. I just want to say, look, at this point, look after yourself and make sure that you and the people that you love around you are safe. Take care, everybody. See ya. Bye.